Well, hello there, this is Kermit the Frog.
Fascinating.
I'm Captain Kirk.
Magic is always there, as long as we keep looking for it.
Engage.
What does God need with a starship?
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Places, please, and here we go.
Down at Fraggle Rock.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, Ramatesians and things, to episode 133 of the MuppeTrek Podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jarman, and we're on a journey across the stars to compare and contrast the creative worlds of Jim Henson and Gene Roddenberry.
What started as reviews of The Muppet Show and Star Trek the original series has expanded into outer space.
And this week we have Fraggle Rock episode Catch a Tail by the Tiger and Star Trek Next Generation episode Loud as a Whisper. But before we do that,
right,
Steve, I want to rock.
Yeah, there are all kinds of gems, jewels, and geodes in the world. Many of them can be found in Fraggle Rock. And this week's gem and geode, or otherwise, is anglicite. It starts its life as a simple byproduct of oxidization from lead ore deposits. And it was first discovered in a copper mine in a place called Anglesey, Wales. In the late 1700s. So that's where it gets anglicite from. Anglesey, I think. This gem is beautiful, but it's very rarely faceted because it splits incredibly easy. And it also gives off lead when you cut it. So people that cut it habitually face like lead poisoning concerns. So faceted versions of this gem are only going to be found in like incredibly complete collections.
It's very pretty.
So it is. So that's anglicite, and that rocks.
That rocks.
I want to rock.
All right. Well, this week's episode of Fraggle Rock, Catch a Tail by the Tiger, with what's up, Doc? A vicious storm hits the cottage as Doc equips Sprocket with this homemade lightning deflector helmet. Looks incredibly suspect. Sprocket refuses to leave the house. Doc presumably forces Sprocket out of the house, where he is struck by lightning, and apparently he loves it. Sprocket is so excited that he got struck by lightning, and they try to go out again. What's going down in Fraggle Rock? Gobo, Red, and Wembley brave it out to outer space, braving the now helmet-clad monster, worried about Uncle Traveling Matt because no one's heard from him for 2 weeks. The Fraggles take some time to speculate on all the things that could have happened to Uncle Traveling Matt. Gobo prepares himself to go on a rescue mission, citing the phrase, "Do like a doozer does and get on with the job." The others think Gobo is just crazy for leaving Fraggle Rock, so he explains it to them in a song. We get Catch a Tail by the Tiger, the namesake of the episode. Gobo sort of takes classic idioms and reverses them. The lyrics being, "Catch a tail by the tiger, take the horns by the bull. A bird in need is a friend indeed, and pull the eyes over the wool." Gobo continues his preparations with a final trip to the trash heap and packing up his things. At the heap, Marjorie asks about his trips and reveals that she knew Uncle Traveling Matt when he was a kid, and her advice to Uncle Traveling Matt was to go enjoy it while he was young, to go on this trip. She tells Gobo not to worry and not to leave, that Uncle Traveling Matt probably just has the flu. Gobo goes back, deciding he's not going to go. The others have prepared a giant send-off. They sing Rolling On, sort of ushering and wishing Gobo luck on his trip, and now he feels like he has to go do it. So he reluctantly goes to leave Fraggle Rock. He ventures briefly into outer space, but is scared back almost immediately. Gobo wakes up the next morning with new resolve. He gives away his worldly possessions and he leaves for outer space. Again, Gobo has a much more somber goodbye with his friends this time. And then he admits he's only going because they expect him to. And they say he doesn't have to go, but he's like, nah, I should go. He leaves anyway and then comes back almost immediately, after revealing that he finally got the postcard from Uncle Traveling Matt. It turns out he just had the flu.
She was right this time.
That's right. So, Darwin, what did you think of this week's episode of Fraggle Rock, Catch a Tail by the Tiger?
I enjoyed a lot of things about this one. I really liked Doc and Sprocket's lightning rod helmets. This is good right after the crazy invention of the blowing machine from last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good inventions coming out of here now. And I love how just dazed and confused but happy that Sprocket was at the end. They're being hit by lightning.
Yeah, that was great.
It was also a really sweet episode showing all the Fraggles really there to support Gobo, and they're really scared for him, and they're sad to see him go. And I like that Red took the longest to believe that he was actually going to go, but then she finally comes to terms with it. And he's like, wow, he's really going to go. I didn't believe it was going to happen. And Catch a Tail by the Tiger was really fun, but it sounded a lot like a Jimmy Buffett song, I thought.
It really did.
Which is not a bad thing. It was a fun Jimmy Buffett song. It was cool. And Rolling on.
Margaritaville.
Yeah, Margaritaville and Fraggle Rock.
Rolling on to be rolling. That was they had two good catchy songs this
two
episode.
Little bangers right here, as the kids would say. But yeah, what'd you think about it?
So I enjoyed this. This is, I think, one that I've had on a VHS tape as a kid.
Okay.
And so because of that, like the songs are very, very deep in my head. Here's what I'm gonna say. This is the first time that I think I can have something this bad, like sort of a bad review for a Fraggle Rock episode. It was a great setup premise. He hasn't heard from Uncle Traveling Matt in 2 weeks. He decides he's got to go. Nobody believes him, but the story didn't advance. He was going to go, and no one thought he was going to go, and then he went, but then he decided not to go until the next morning when he decided to go again, and everyone still didn't believe him until he was going. But then they did believe him, but then he left anyway. So then he immediately came back and told them he wasn't going. I was like, what is happening in this episode?
I did write that there wasn't a whole lot of plot, but yet it didn't really drag too much for me somehow. So I thought it turned out to be okay in the end. But you're absolutely right. I was like, not a lot's going on here. No
plot. And for me, that dragged. It felt like we just kept rehashing the same thing over and over and over. So I'm going to say this is my least favorite Fraggle Rock episode because it's the only one that I've had like a remotely bad thing to say about.
That's fair. Yeah. I think even though it didn't drag too much for me, I do see that. I wrote that even in my notes that there wasn't a lot of plot going on here. Not a lot of things happened. They could have had a Gorg subplot on the side. They could have done something else to make it kind of fill out.
Doozers, anything.
Yeah.
God.
Doozers, something.
Well, good thing we did get trash heaps. That's good.
Yeah.
But I think there's these episodes we're looking for where we want to collect all four.
Yeah, exactly.
Fraggle, Doozer, Gorg, and Trash Heap.
And a good Doc Sprocket sideline there,
and
too.
A great Doc. That's a 5. That's a fist. That's a fist of great Fraggle episode.
We had our criteria for the Muppet Show. That's our criteria for this.
Yeah, all 5 good plots.
If you add a new one in on the side, even better. Perfect.
That's right. So I am saying this is probably my lowest rated one because it's the only one I've had a really remotely bad thing to say about. But you're right, both songs are really good.
Yeah, and like the Doc Sprocket
really
thing.
Were.
So it's like it wasn't a total dud, but you're right, it wasn't.
Yeah, not total dud, but it's the only one I could have complained about so far.
Yeah, I feel that absolutely. Could we get worse from here? Who knows?
Well, what the hell is Uncle Traveling Matt up to this week? Well, Gobo's forced to recount one of Uncle Traveling Matt's old postcards since he hasn't heard from him in so long. And in this week, he goes and meets what he calls the shiny creatures, loud creatures that live in roads and honk their language at him, which he is trying to learn. Of course, he's talking about cars with car horns.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk a little bit about car horns today. Well, in the horse-drawn days, bells or in some cases some like small honk kind of driven horns were used, but they were mostly to alert pedestrians and other carriages of you coming to blind corners and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when more and more cars hit the streets, the lighter sounds really fell to the wayside as roadways got louder. And in 1908 the klaxon horn was developed. This is the one that has that classic that we all think of. That's the klaxon horn.
That's what they call it in Star Trek when the red alert goes off in the original series. It's a klaxon.
That's right. And while now honking is seen as like very rude and like an aggressive thing, back then it was considered polite because it was like letting pedestrians know that you were coming. But now it's like, I have freaking jagweed, honk honk. By the mid-1930s, klaxons were mostly replaced by electrical-driven horns. And this is crazy. Today, Bosch, the like major like sound system maker, is the most notable car horn maker as well. It has 3 major varieties. There are compressor horns, which are the big blasty ones that you hear on like semi trucks and other commercial vehicles. You know, they sound so much bigger. It's because they're a different style horn. That's why. Then there's disc horns, which are much more tinny or metallic sounding. So if you ever horns like, that's probably a disc horn. And then there's a fanfare horn, which creates like a much more full harmonic sound. So those ones that like this kind of.
I love like all the impersonations.
More rounder ones. But not because that's the klaxon.
Oh, I want the klaxon again.
Well, who knows which one Uncle Traveling Matt was chatting with, but that is car horns and what those silly creatures were up to.
Love it.
What did you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
Nothing that was particularly stood out as like unique, but I love the big group numbers. They're always impressive. And they had basically 2 of those this episode where there's just everybody was on screen, like almost all the Fraggles you can think of in the background, the moving ones that just had the head moving and the ones that had all the different maneuvering around and all the friends and everything. So that was just, it was always impressive to me in the big Fraggle Rock set and everything.
I feel like we're kind of establishing this canon piece here where Fraggles have some sort of joint mind.
Yeah.
Because at one point it's like, bye everybody. And they all go, bye Gobo, but it's all of them. And it's like they have some sort of hive sensory thing they can all tap into.
For their music too. Like they can all
mostly
jump into
for musical numbers.
Yeah.
Like that's really where it comes in play is they have to connect to like make these musical things.
That's a canon now for us. They have a partial hive mind.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Sprocket after he got hit by the lightning.
Oh yeah.
It was just such a funny portrayal and the little changes they made to the puppet
goofy looking
to communicate
face.
That. Yeah. And the joke that he just really enjoyed getting hit by lightning was such a subversion that I got a good laugh out of it.
Oh, let's do it again.
Because you expected him to come back in like, no, I'm never going out again.
Because he usually hates all of his inventions. So
yeah. So just Sprocket, but only post lightning strike.
Fair. I like it.
So, Charmin, what happened on this week's episode of Star Trek The Next Generation?
We had Loud as a Whisper. So, the Enterprise has been enlisted by the Federation to help facilitate peace on a planet called Soleus 5. It's always a number. By picking up a renowned negotiator/mediator named Riva. And apparently he is super successful in the past. He even helped negotiate peace with the Klingons. And in this case, he'll be trying to get peace between 2 warring peoples that have been at war for centuries on this planet. So the Enterprise goes to the planet to pick Riva up, and they find out that he's actually deaf, but uses 3 other people as his chorus. And which is surprising they didn't know this because he's very famous, but they didn't know that's how he worked. But apparently the royal family in his planet has a hereditary thing where they can't ever hear. Like it's not even fixable by surgery. So they have these chorus members for generations that basically telepathically speak to them. And they say out loud what he's thinking. But each one of them represents a different part of his brain. Like one of them is the lustful and passionate thoughts and is the warrior. The other is this creative strategist and the artist poet. And the third is the harmony and wisdom of all 3 of them put together, kind of speaking as one. And once the Enterprise is to get on their way to the warring planet with Riva, Picard tries to brief Riva on the situation, give him the details of the warring tribesmen. But Riva says, I don't need to know the details. He very arrogantly implies, all these conflicts are the same. I got this figured out. Don't worry about it. I'll get it when I get there. And they're like, okay, gosh. And he's too distracted also by getting the hots for Deanna Troi. Yeah, that's why he wants to leave the briefing early, because he wants to go have dinner with her, with his just one member of his chorus, the one who has, the lustful passions. So they finally get alone time together without his chorus, and she learns some of his signing language that he has as well as a backup. Then they all beam down to meet with the tribal delegates on the planet to start negotiations, but one of the tribesmen fires on Riva, but Riker pushes him out of the way just in time to have Riva's chorus completely annihilated and disintegrated by the laser gun. So the tribe leaders didn't want this, though, so they kill that offending tribesman, but Riva and the Enterprise crew quickly beam away back to the ship. And now Riva's back on the ship, and he's pissed off and depressed that his chorus is dead, and he's frustrated because he can't communicate with anybody on the ship. But basically, Picard gives the equivalent of a slap to the face and like, calm down, we'll figure this out. So Data quickly goes to the computer and figures and learns all of sign language in a matter of minutes. And he's able to now translate for Riva. So Riva wants to quit and go home, but Troi says she's going to have to go down then and negotiate in his place. And Riva's concerned for her, but also insists that she can't do that without proper training and knowledge, and says that she'll need to turn their disadvantage into an advantage to help these tribesmen. And Troi says, why don't you do that? Why don't you turn your disadvantage into an advantage? And this gives Riva an idea. So he goes back down to negotiate with the tribesmen, but says that he will not need any translating by Data and to just leave him there with them alone for months because he's going to teach them sign language to communicate with them. And by doing so, he'll teach the tribesmen to work together for a common goal and show that they can work together for peace. And so the Enterprise just ditches them there and they leave and hope for the best. And that's the end of the episode. So Steve, what do you think about this one?
All right. So some things I liked. I really enjoyed the clear expectations at the beginning about that they are not there to interfere or be involved. And they really set that scene well. So you kind of knew the confines of the episode, which I liked.
I didn't mention that.
So double-bladed sword here. Great introduction of the premise. The one man with three voices, his mission, him like confronting Picard when Picard doesn't talk to him and talks to the Chorus instead.
Yeah.
So some good establishing things, but you're right. If he was a famous negotiator, they would have a dossier on him with everything, including this. We've seen them do it before. Why would it not have happened here?
Unless he requested specifically not to include that in the details or something, but they didn't say that. So I don't know.
Tell them nothing of me.
For some reason.
But so that was the one thing where I was like, that was just too dumb to not believe. Him going after Troi felt maybe the least forced of all the people who have tried thus far in Star Trek. Because he certainly was not the first one to hit on her or go after her, but her empathic like connection with him and him being a being that couldn't speak language, like it made sense.
Right.
Finally.
He'd be intrigued by that.
Feel forced. And he was subtle and like he wasn't, what the hell's Okana?
Oh, yeah.
He was just like, oh, hey, baby, I'll see you in your room. Like
Riva's like, can I take you to dinner first?
Right. So I think Riva gets some bonus points for that in my book.
I agree.
I did like the sort of twist when the negotiations fell apart suddenly and the death of his chorus. I did not see that coming.
I forgot about that, too.
And then I love that moment with Picard where Picard, you like slaps him basically because he just goes, you are not alone. We are all in this, and like grabs his hand and said, in this together.
Good Picard moment. Yeah.
Great use of Data. Finally, the sign language. But once again, why wasn't this in a dossier?
Right.
I don't understand.
They could have been prepared ahead of time.
And then good resolution. It felt very Star Trek-y. Him teaching the sign language. So like not only Riva teaching, but Riva learning to communicate with others directly again himself.
Right. Something he hadn't done before.
There was very good parody there. Some things I struggled with a little bit. Riva being pissy on the Enterprise went on way longer than it should have.
I'm mad and angry.
Right. Like, God, could you just cut it out?
Riva the diva.
And I wish we could have explored more of how the negotiations would have gone.
Before he got shot.
Before he got shot. I wanted to see more of his technique.
That's true. So they built it up so much. How it was going to
happen. They built it up so much, and then it just flipped too quick, and I went, all right.
I can see that.
But otherwise, I thought the guy who played Riva was real good.
Mm-hmm.
An actual deaf actor, which was double awesome.
And a big, imposing guy, too. Like,
yeah. But I thought he was great and really carried the episode.
Yeah, I believed him. Yeah.
But
I think it's one of the I love how it focuses so much on diplomacy. Like you said, it's a very TNG episode, showing the differences in cultures, and it also big thing on normalizing disabilities as we would see them. Like I love the moment I mentioned before between Riva and Geordi, when he gets to meet everybody on the ship. He really takes to Geordi because he sees that Geordi is also blind, but has this device helping him. And like they have a little moment there, and they bond over the fact that they both have this disability, but it makes them who they are, and they wouldn't really have it any other way. You know, it's just, that's who I am. And I mean,
that was good.
Yeah. And the actor was really good. The chorus really worked really well. I thought they were really cool. Good actors. Nobody was really kind of the weak link there. I thought they could have made Riva look more alien and his chorus people, because they're just like humans. I thought that was a kind of a missed opportunity, but I guess they didn't need to. The alien makeup on the aliens that were fighting each other, the tribesmen, was a little rough, but it was like they just threw on some prosthetics.
It looks like they picked like 4 different things we've seen so far and just put them
mixed them together in a blender on their face.
We're never gonna see these guys again.
They're not that important. Just throw something on their face. I don't know.
Literally never again.
What's left over in the makeup bin? Okay, throw it on there.
That's right.
Yeah, and I really loved it. It mentioned the because it wasn't important to the plot, but Picard on 2 different occasions getting hyper fixated on this weird sciencey thing in his ready room that Riker was like, "Hey, that's great, Picard, but we got to go do our mission." Remember the beginning, he's looking at that diagram of the planets. He's like, "I'm fascinated by this old planet we went to a long time ago where the orbits just aren't making sense." He's like, cool. Can we go do the mission? I thought that's really funny because it's kind of...
See, when I heard that, I thought maybe it was like a call to maybe some bigger plot happening.
Yeah, it really wasn't.
A little bit of that. But that was me being naive and being like, maybe this comes back later.
I like it, just kind of a little character moment showing that Picard's like a nerd and he just loves focusing on these logic problems and shit. But yeah, where do you think this ranks in your thing so far?
This, I'm going to say, because of the strength of Riva, overall good plot that I had a good surprising moment with, some good acting throughout, and a very Star Trek-y feel and Star Trek-y solution. I'm going to say this one's probably in the top 3 for the season so far for me.
I don't disagree, because I think it's so unique too. There's not any of the tropes that we're so tired of, the godlike power people and all the other crap we've seen a million times. This was just totally different. It was just a nice, unique story and all that Trekkie goodness in there. So yeah, I agree. Top something for me. I'll find out at the end of the season, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it'll take a while to get there.
Yeah. But some Trek facts for this episode. As Steve mentioned, Howie Siego, the actor who played Riva, is deaf, approached the show's producers with the idea of a deaf mediator. The initial idea came from his wife, who was a fan of Star Trek, and the writers originally wanted Siego's character to learn to speak after the chorus is killed, but Siego was opposed to the idea as it could perpetuate the practice of forcing deaf children to speak. The producers were understanding of his concerns and wrote a new draft of the script just because of his idea, which is pretty cool. Marnie Moseman, who played Harmony in Riva's chorus, she's the wife of John Delancey, who plays Q, which is pretty cool.
Oh, real life. Nice.
Riva's dialogue is actually in American Sign Language when he's using this. I didn't know if it was actually real sign, but yeah, that's real American Sign Language. 2 scenes in Picard's ready room, which depict a hologram that I was talking about of the Lima Sierra system. Are one of only 2 instances during the entire run of the series that a holographic interface on a desk is seen in operation. So we see that a lot in the new Star Trek shows that are out where they have holographic displays of things, but this is only done twice. It probably was very expensive to do back then.
Yeah, I betcha.
This is the first Star Trek role for Randy Oglesby as the scholar of Riva's chorus, the guy who was like the strategist of Riva's chorus. But then he goes on to play several roles in Star Trek in Deep Space Nine, Voyager, a one-off role of the captain on a Zerillian ship in Voyager, as well as the recurring character of Degra in Star Trek Enterprise. So he's on a bunch of shit for Star Trek after this.
Yeah, he had his IMDb page was like a mile long.
Oh gosh,
tiny roles.
Big character actor. Dr. Pulaski raises the possibility in this episode of treating LaForge's blindness via corrective surgery. And LeVar Burton had at one time campaigned for this character's sight to be restored so that he could use his expressive eyes while acting instead of being covered by that thing every episode. But the Star Trek Next Generation Companion suggests that this scene was added to prepare for this possibility. They talked about this in this episode, so down the line they can get rid of his visor. But following the scene, the idea was dropped and is never mentioned again during the course of the series. In the series finale, you see some of it like that. And then the movies, First Contact and Insurrection, they finally
he
have
has eye implants.
Yeah, stuff. Exactly. So it does happen, but they were originally planning to eventually phase out his visor, but then they're like, oh, we like it. And he's like, oh, you'll never see my eyes. So that is the facts. So we got any Trek connections, Steve?
Oh, boy. Well, Howie Seago played Riva. He also played a role called Austin McCabe on the TV show Hunter.
Ooh.
Also featured was Garrett Morris, SNL season 1 cast member who was there at the same time when Jim Henson and the Muppets were also on SNL.
Uh-huh.
That's right. Season 1. Marnie Massaman, who played Harmony, was also on an episode of Remington Steele, featuring a young Pierce Brosnan who appeared on an episode of Muppets Tonight.
Aha, what a connection.
And then Randy Oglesby, who really had a very diverse IMDb page to look at. He played the scholar. He was in an episode of Boston Legal, which of course has Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, but also Candace Bergen, who guest starred on The Muppet Show, as did her father, Edgar Bergen.
Oh, yes. We watched that terrible
Muppet
episode.
Movie cameo with Charlie McKenzie.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our Trek connections.
Some good ones. I like it.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, it must have been easy.
Same episode.
Same episode. Absolutely. So similar.
Both feature someone feeling all alone. Riva after he lost his chorus, and Gobo when he feels like he'll disappoint his friends if he doesn't leave.
I had some on a similar track. Both have a character losing confidence in their mission.
Yeah.
Gobo to go after his uncle and Riva to negotiate the peace treaty.
I think this one fits the same one. Both feature people reluctantly being alone, but also being brave.
Yes.
Riva when he's still down on the planet alone, getting ready to teach sign language, and Gobo at multiple points when he leaves over and over and over again. This
and
episode.
and over.
over.
Both have characters getting hit by a very powerful beam of light, Sprocket getting hit by lightning, and the 3 members of Riva's chorus getting annihilated by a disruptor beam.
Very similar.
Very similar. Oh no, but what's that noise? Oh God!
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
Okay, it's a part of the episode where we transport one character from one episode to the other and vice versa. So what you got for us, Steve?
All right, Rock to Trek this week. I'm going to bring over Philo and Munge and replace the chorus because I think it would be hilarious with Riva not mentioning a word and they're like, he wants you to leave. Yeah. Just like little snarky interpretations. And then that's why they get shot.
That's hilarious. And he's actually glad they're gone because he's really annoyed by them all the time. Rock to Trek. I want the trash heap to come over to replace Troi, only because I think it'd be hilarious to see Riva trying to romance the trash heap.
Yes.
I want to have dinner with you. Okay.
Well, you're going to have to invite Philo and Munge.
If you insist.
Trek to Rock, bring over Data to replace Doc, building an equally contrived contraption that Sprocket will trust even less, but would actually work.
It would actually work.
It would actually work.
Trek to Rock, I'm going to have a similar thing. I'm going to have Riva come over to take the place of Doc. He could one day negotiate a peace treaty between the Fraggles and the Gorgs.
Aw,
yeah,
they need that help.
That's right, because it's hard. They're fighting all the time. All right, that brings us to the end of episode 133 of the MuppeTrek Podcast.
Join us next time for Fraggle Rock episode, The Finger of Light.
Ooh, sounds sexy. And Star Trek The Next Generation episode, The Schizoid Man.
So from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.